Thank you, everyone, for being with us today for the City of Raleigh work session. I am calling the meeting to order. To start, I would like to first off say that Mayor Pro Tem Stewart is excused today from the meeting, and I want to extend our deepest sympathies to her and her husband Les and their families on the loss of Les's dad, her father-in-law. So, Nicole, our hearts are with you, thinking of you, and praying for you. Our first order of business today, we will receive a municipal election update from Robin Tatum, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. As the agenda states, this is an update on some municipal election issues that have arisen due to some census delays due to the pandemic. And I think most of you are aware that the delay in the receipt of the 2020 federal census data has caused some substantial legal issues should the city council elections be held in October of 2021, which is when they're scheduled. Now, over the last several months, there's been some press coverage, and we have discussed these issues a few times at council meetings, but we've basically been waiting and hoping for a legislative solution. But we're really at a point now where I think the city needs to make some decisions about what the best solutions are for the city of Raleigh and how to get them accomplished. I will say that the council has indicated that it is particularly important to give voters certainty about when the next election will be so that they know when they should be able to cast their votes. Now, there are several potential solutions, and I just want to take a few minutes for some people who may be watching that may not really understand what the problem is and how it arose. So I'll just go over that pretty quickly. As everyone does know, there are 8 council members, a mayor, 2 at-large, and 5 district council members. And any municipality or local government that has district elections, one of the legal requirements that is associated with that is that each one of those geographical districts should have basically roughly the same number of the same population numbers. And this means that they're balanced. And this is based on equal protection, one person, one vote principles. And what that means is that each council member should represent roughly the same amount of people. So everyone's vote carries the same weight to the degree possible. And the North Carolina Supreme Court has said that differential can be plus or minus 5%. So that is the how much different the districts can be. So as far as how that is determined, every 10 years there is a federal census, and that's to count residents of the United States and the number of people who live in the cities, including Raleigh. And that data also tells us how many people live in each existing council district. So once that data comes in, we're required to look at it and to find out if the lines as drawn are still balanced. Do they still have roughly the same number of people in each one? And if, when the 5% rule is applied, those districts have gotten too large or too small, then the districts have to be redrawn in order to be constitutional. And what that also means is some people will move from one district to another, and some council members will represent certain areas, perhaps now that they didn't before. Now, the problem is that usually the census data is available in April, the beginning of April of the year after the census, which would have been April of 2021. But because of the pandemic, we do not have that data yet and are not expected to get it until the end of September. And because candidates have to file in July, and the election is in October, it is impossible to have new district lines drawn by that time. And we do know, based on the growth of Raleigh in the last 10 years, that there's no question that there's going to have to be some changes in the lines. So Basically, the dilemma is we can't hold a constitutional election unless we move the lines. We can't move the lines without the data. We don't have that data. So the other dilemma is, as the law is now written, we cannot unilaterally change the election date. That has to be done by the General Assembly. So in order to fix this problem, we need some help legislatively. Now, fortunately, the North Carolina General Assembly has recognized this issue and has committed to addressing it. And we're beginning to see those solutions in the form of several types of bills. And these bills will operate to make sure that cities are not forced to have unconstitutional elections in 2021. There are two types of bills. One is a statewide bill and the other is a local bill. Those are two different ways the problem can be solved. A statewide bill applies to every municipality in the city that runs with districts. It would be a one size fits all. So if the state bill, you would use that, then everybody would have the same fix. The second is through a local act, which one municipality can ask for, and that can take into account individual needs of a certain city and avoid this sort of one size fits all issue. Now, the General Assembly has indicated a willingness to do both approaches. They've already entertained both types of bills. One statewide bill has been filed and has passed the Senate. That's SB 722. I'll talk about that in a second. And at least one local bill has been passed from the city of Mount Airy. And that has actually been signed into law. Now, the statewide bill, I'm just going to sort of explain what that one does. It has passed the Senate. It was filed in May. And what it does is it moves, in its current form, it moves municipalities with districts to an election in March of 2022. Now, it passed the Senate on June 3rd. It changed a number of times while it was in the Senate. Again, that's because there's different cities with different needs and they're trying to have something that works for everyone. It has gone to the House and we don't really know what it's going to look like ultimately when it's passed. As it is now drafted, the district maps would have to be adopted by the city in November or at the very latest December 17th, 2021. And that would give just several months between when we get the data, which would be September 30th, until we need to draw the districts. And that would also cut your 2-year terms by about 5 months. And you would need to run in both 2022 and 2023. So we know there's going to be a statewide fix, or we believe there's going to be a statewide fix, but we're not sure exactly what it's going to look like when it's ultimately passed and whether or not that will really be the best solution for Raleigh. Now, the other option would be to pursue a local bill. As I've stated, the city of Mount Airy has one that's been passed. And what that bill does is it moves their election from odd to even years going forward. Their next election will be in November of 2022, and then every 2 years thereafter. And this particular approach has become more common with cities in recent years. And it not only avoids the constitutional issues with the upcoming election, but the reasons for the change for Mount Airy was that they wanted to increase voter turnout and decrease election costs. And we do have a lot of data, and I think our committee, our 4-year term committee is looking at this, is that there's no question that many, many more people vote in even years than odd years. So under that bill, their council terms would extend to November 2022 and run in even years after that. The bill had a lot of support in the General Assembly. As a matter of fact, I was told that the Senate actually did a voice vote, didn't even record it. It went through pretty quickly, pretty easily. And so that is another option for Raleigh. And there are some advantages to the city and the voters for going that route. The first one is certainty as to when the election will be. And we're pursuing this local bill, and if it were to pass, then, and we have a local bill moving it to even years, then you would know I'm going to vote every 2 years in November in even years. Right now, with the state bill, it looks like you would have to vote in March of 2022 and in a different month in 2023. And that might be confusing to some voters. The second is the city is planning to pursue a parks bond referendum with the next municipal election. It has to be run in conjunction with another election, so you can't do it by itself. There are a lot of steps and a lot of engagement needed to prepare for a bond referendum to maximize the probability of it passing, and knowing for sure what that election date is would help with the bond referendum as well. Otherwise, you may have to, you may not even know what date that you're shooting for. And when you've got to roll the months back, we could be in a pretty tight timeline. And then third, we don't know what the Raleigh numbers are specifically according to the census. They do say that, you know, the census may be hard to predict this year because of the pandemic and the response rate, but we do know based on preliminary data that we're probably going to have to move some districts, probably all 5. And some smaller towns could probably do this quickly. I think with the city our size growing as fast as we are, that if you had more than several months to do that, that would give you more time to make sure that it's done correctly in a fair and equitable manner, that you were able to get input from the community and figure out which is the best way to move the lines around without being rushed. And the last thing is there is currently a council appointed study group looking at election and council compensation issues. They're looking at whether council should go to 4-year terms is one thing. They may give you other suggestions on elections. And in order to make changes like go to 4 years, that is also a multi-month process. So in order to have time to consider it and get engagement, that's difficult to do on a short time frame. So basically, in sum, this has been a legal issue because we are faced with a situation of having to deal with a potentially unlawful election, and what are the potential remedies. And I think council has considered them all, and I have spoken with them, and because of the issues I have explained and the desire for certainty and to make sure that we have time to have all of the steps done transparently, legally, and correctly, that it is the consensus of the majority of the council that the city lobbyist and I move forward with the process to ask our local delegation to pursue a local bill that is similar to the Mount Airy bill and would move elections to November of 2022 and to even years thereafter, and to also change the form of election to what's known as nonpartisan plurality, which would take away the need for runoff. It would just be one election. So I think that process is underway, and that's basically the report that I have.
Hey, thank you, City Attorney. Councilmember Cox.
Yes, I just want to clarify my position about this. Having had a chance to reflect more, and I just want to say that I know, the discussion has been that there was a choice between March and November of 2022. And one of the things I'm concerned about is that when we were elected in 2019, the expectation was that we would serve a 2-year term. And I kind of view that as a social contract with the public. And I'm concerned about extending our term literally an entire year. And so my position is that I support asking the legislature to have our election synchronized with the primary, and which we understand will be March. However, there's some possibility it could be moved to May. But in either case, I support moving our election so it coincides with the primary. And I think that does a couple of things. One is that it does provide some certainty about when the election will happen. It does increase voter turnout because voter turnout during the primary will certainly be higher than what we have had in our municipal elections. And I think it honors our social contract for the 2021 election that we were elected for a 2-year term, at least as much as possible. I think that moving municipal elections to November of even years is also a goal worthy of further consideration, possibly beginning with the 2024 election. However, to be clear upon further reflection of our options, supporting, I prefer to move the election to coincide with the primary in 2022. And I just wanted to be clear about my position on this. Thank you.
Okay. That runs contrary to the advice that was provided to the city attorney previously, but so I'm kind of confused, but that it does run contrary to what you've already stated in the direction we provided the city attorney. So
I did update the city attorney with my position before the meeting.
So there is a vote on this. City attorney.
I think the consensus of the majority of council is to move forward with the local bill. Mr. Cox's change in his position does not change the direction of the majority of council.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your report. And we will now go on to Heritage Park and city-owned sites.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. We do have Wayne Felton here, Executive Director of the Raleigh Housing Authority, to talk about options for the existing tenants at Heritage Park in terms of relocation when that property is relocated in the future. And he's here to answer any questions you have after providing that overview. And then we do have a presentation on the disposition of city lots and what our recommendations are with respect to that. And we are also prepared to make a brief report on proposed changes to our housing rehabilitation program. But first, I'll turn this over to Wayne Felton.
Hello, Mayor Baldwin and City Council members. Thank you all for inviting us here today. I have with me our Board Chair, Arnie Morris, and our Vice Chair, Eric Braun. So I wanted to give you a little overview of Heritage Park. It's a public housing project that's operated by the Raleigh Housing Authority. The community was built in 2 phases, which were completed in 1977 and 79. It consists of 122 public housing units and covers 12 acres approximately. And these units are available to families making 30% or less of the area median income. Given the age and condition of the buildings, they're nearing the end of their useful life. And based on the condition of those buildings and the urgent need for affordable housing in downtown, we determined that redeveloping Heritage Park represents a unique opportunity to expand the number of affordable housing units in downtown, which are near employment opportunities, community services, and public amenities. We're in the early planning of this exciting opportunity, and there's much work to be done. As you can imagine, redeveloping a urban infill public housing community is a complex process involving the Heritage Park residents, community stakeholders, and multiple government entities. We're currently implementing a comprehensive citizen outreach and community engagement program that will continue until the redevelopment is complete and residents are returned to the new Heritage Park. We understand that Heritage Park is a special community, and we will make every effort to keep our residents informed and involved throughout the planning and redevelopment process. During our course of engagement, we have received 3 questions which are asked of us frequently. The first one is, will I have to move while Heritage Park is being redeveloped? Unfortunately, most residents will have to relocate during the redevelopment process. We understand that relocating can be stressful and daunting task for our residents. So our goal is to minimize resident disruption and inconvenience. In order to do that, we will offer 3 options for relocation, and residents can select which option best suits their personal circumstances. The first option allows residents to relocate using a housing choice voucher, which is also known as a Section 8 voucher. The vouchers can be used to relocate to market rate apartments or homes that accept the vouchers. These vouchers can also be used by residents to transfer, which is called porting, to other housing opportunities in other parts of the state or the country. The second option involves residents relocating to other public housing units, which are owned and operated by the Raleigh Housing Authority. Residents will be given information about alternative public housing communities and asked to provide staff with their preferred options. We will do our best to accommodate each resident's preferred option, but each transfer is dependent on current vacancies, bedroom sizes, and accessibility needs. The third option offers residents the opportunity to remain at Heritage Park during the redevelopment process. Because we are planning to phase the demolition and the reconstruction, some residents can request to be relocated within the community as different phases are demolished and then rebuilt. Our goal is to minimize the number of families required to leave Heritage Park. Our development team is currently working on a preliminary phasing plan. And then to address moving costs, we have adopted the Federal Uniform Relocation Assistance Act to provide financial assistance to those that must relocate. And we will also provide, upon request, supplemental assistance with packing furniture and possessions that at no cost to senior and disabled residents. The second question we get frequently is, can I return to Heritage Park once the redevelopment is complete? We're working hard to ensure that every resident that wants to return to the new Heritage Park has that opportunity. To do that, residents will be subject to minimal rescreening to confirm that each returning resident still satisfies applicable income eligibility criteria that has been, they have also not been charged with serious drug-related or violent criminal activity, and they have not committed a serious violation of their current lease. If returning residents satisfy these minimal criteria, they will have the opportunity to return to the new Heritage Park. The third question we get frequently is, can I afford the rents at the new Heritage Park after redevelopment? One of the guiding principles approved by the Raleigh Housing Authority Board is that the new Heritage Park include at least 122 units available to residents making 30% or less of the area median income. Beyond those units, we are working on preliminary plans to build at least 200 additional affordable housing units on the property, including a building that will be dedicated to seniors. The preliminary plans include a child care center, space for community gathering, and space to deliver resident support services. But let me stress again that we're in the early stages of the redevelopment process, and plans are likely to evolve as we engage residents and the community. We're implementing a comprehensive resident and community outreach program in conjunction with a rezoning application that will be filed in the coming weeks. Through that process, we will continue to engage residents and other community stakeholders to ensure that the redevelopment of Heritage Park addresses the needs of current residents and offers expanded affordable housing opportunities to new residents. Heritage Park is in a prime location downtown, and the redevelopment will ensure low and moderate income Raleigh residents will continue to enjoy access to employment opportunities, services, and community infrastructure like the bus rapid transit, greenways, and Dix Park from the comfort and security of a modern residential community. We look forward to working with you and other community partners as this project moves forward.
That was an excellent presentation. Thank you, Wayne. Do we have any, I just want to make the comment, when you talked about a child care center, I think that is so important and critical to building a child's future and providing them with opportunities. So I was very glad to hear that. I'm going to ask the rest of the council if they have any questions. Councilmember Fort.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good afternoon, Mr. Felton. Appreciate you coming to give us this presentation. I too have heard a lot from folks in the community with a number of concerns about this particular development project. So I actually have a number of questions. The first is, have you communicated to the folks at Heritage Park what their options are in terms of relocating during the development phase? There seems to be still a lot of questions about what the existing residents are supposed to do while the project is under development.
So we have communicated that to the residents. At this point, again, we're early in this redevelopment process, so there's nothing for residents to do right now. We'll continue to keep them informed as we move through this process, but we have informed them of the three options that we've mentioned today.
Okay, and have you communicated with them about like the timing? Like, will they know how much time they have to make a decision and then be prepared if they're going to use a voucher or go to another housing authority facility? Do they have any sense of what the timing window is going to be?
So we have communicated to them that, again, that we are early in this process and we don't have a date when they'll actually be moving because it is going to be a lengthy process. But per the HUD regs, we do have to give people 90-day notice before they move. But we have not issued that. Again, we're early on and we're nowhere near relocating families at this time.
Okay, well, I think it's helpful for them to at least know to be a 90-day notice provision, because I think there's a lot of anxiety that folks don't necessarily know when the provisions are going to be triggered. My next question is, under Section 2 of your memo, you indicated that there are minimal rescreening requirements. Are these the only criteria that will be considered, or is there anything else the residents need to know that will be, part of the evaluation about their opportunity to return to Heritage Park?
No, these are what the criteria will be.
Okay, and has this information been communicated to the residents?
We have talked with the residents that there would be a minimal rescreening process.
But they don't know what their criteria is? I'm sorry.
I believe we did. I believe we've given them criteria, but we can certainly give it to them again. We can post this on our website, this letter, and make sure that everyone's clear on that.
Okay, and in addition to posting it on the website, because I'm not sure that everybody's got internet access, it'd probably be helpful if you maybe consider mailing them something or take something to the community so they directly know what the criteria is, because again, that's one of the areas that's causing anxiety for residents. They don't know what the criteria is for them to be able to return to the community. Okay, I guess my last question for now, and I'll let somebody else have a turn. You mentioned this area is 12 acres. It's in close proximity to downtown. It's on a transit, corridor. What would it take for us to contemplate a much more dense project in this area? One of the things we're seeing in Raleigh is a lot of the affordable housing units that are privately owned are, being, sold to developers, and, the numbers of folks who need housing at the 30% AMI level is rapidly increasing. So is there a way that we could look at doing something much more dense on 12 acres, and even reserving a 50% of the units for 50% AMI and under, and then the other 50% go to whatever income rate necessary. But it just seems that with this particular property, we could probably do something much more aggressive to make sure we've got units for folks, because right now we know we've got about 300 households that we need for folks who are homeless, and then we're rapidly getting more people coming into the space of needing affordable housing at the lower end of the economic spectrum. So is this not a place that we could look at doing a much more dense project?
Well, a couple of things. If we go more dense, there would be parking concerns. So you would have to possibly have a parking structure, which is more expense. The funding model that we're looking at is using tax credits along with bonds and gap financing. And they're not geared for those types of constructions to go tall or anything like that. And we wouldn't have money for a parking deck. So we could look at that, but those are some of the concerns that we've raised as we've been talking through this process as well.
Okay. Madam Mayor, I have some follow-ups, but I'll come back.
Okay. And also I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say there is going to be a meeting on this further. So if we could, there's going to be a joint work session with the Housing Authority. So, this is the initial discussion. So I'm going to ask Mr. Cox to ask his question next, and then Councilor Branch. But we're going to have plenty of opportunity to continue this conversation. So, Councilmember Cox.
Yes. Yeah, I'm concerned about a relative lack of guarantees to the existing residents. Will the residents that are currently there be told today or as soon as possible whether or not they will be able to return to Heritage? Or are you saying that they have to wait until construction is done and then they have to reapply at that point in time to return to Heritage? I would like to see stronger guarantees to say that we will go to each resident that's there today and give them certainty as to whether or not they will be able to return once the construction is completed. The other thing I'm concerned about is the amount of time given to people to vacate the property. It's one thing to say, well, we're going to give you a voucher, but you have to be out in 90 days. I'd like to see stronger guarantees that we're not going to begin construction until we have placed people into housing. So those are a couple of my concerns. I'm very concerned about the existing residents. I'm very concerned that there will be people, given what you've outlined today, that will be out on the street and not able to find another place to live. And for me, that proposition is not acceptable.
Okay, Councilmember Branch.
Well, I was going to ask if create a fact sheet. There's a lot of questions that you seem to have
Councilmember
answers.
Branch, we're having a hard time hearing you.
Can y'all not hear me? Test, can you hear me? I have volume all the way up because I can hear y'all. And my mic's up. Go to someone else and come back.
Councilmember Buffkin.
Thank you, Mayor. And I hear you. We're just starting the conversation, so I'll be very brief. I just want to add my voice of support on Councilmember Fort's last point. I think this is a real important opportunity for us. And I think that developing Heritage Park at 300 or so units, as is currently contemplated, falls short of seizing the full opportunity. I understand this isn't the model that, going higher, denser with structured parking isn't the model that we usually use. But, this is 2021. We've got a housing crisis in our community. And if there was ever a time to do something different, this is it. And I would really encourage you to take a serious look at some mid-rise, maybe even some high-rise We've got strong support for the community on affordable housing. We've got our bond funds, and I'd really like to see a more impactful development when Heritage Park redevelops in terms of more density and more opportunity for people to have a safe, affordable home in Raleigh.
Thank you. Councilmember Melton.
Just wanted to join in my support on what Councilmember Fort and Councilmember Buffkin said. I think that location, the size, and our need, I think it would be a missed opportunity not to add more units and to increase the density. And I'm hoping that knowing that we're early on in this process, perhaps we could find ways to collaborate and work together. If it's the issue of parking, perhaps there's something we can do to help that situation. I know some of the other developments in that area that are market rate are, I think I just saw one that's being proposed at 20 stories for apartments. So I think that the area would be able to accommodate additional density for our most vulnerable and at-need residents.
Any other comments?
Can you hear me
Councilmember,
now?
we can hear you, but barely. So
Okay.
you'll have to speak up.
All right.
That's
Okay.
better.
I'll speak up. So
That's better.
basically, I was agreeing with Councilor Fort, but I was going to ask a couple questions. One is, can you create a fact sheet that will have the questions with the answers to them that can be shared with the residents as well as others who may be other family members who may be assisting some of those residents that may have needs and they require assistance. The other thing is the kids that go there. Making sure, a lot of movement can really impact the kids' education. So can we look at partnering with communities and schools? They do a lot of work in other parts of the area to work with these young people to make sure that they don't get lost or left behind in their schoolwork. And then again, like I said, we're gonna have more conversation on this, but I wanted to share these items because these are things that need to be worked on now so that we can be ahead of things.
Okay, thank you. Wayne, I had a couple of things. First off, Corey, I think the communities and schools idea is a great one. And having served on the Communities and Schools Board, I know that we've had a relationship with the Raleigh Housing Authority for many years, specifically at Heritage. So looking to potentially duplicate that effort would be great. I would also suggest that you contact DHIC. They did a great job on the when they transitioned people over at Washington Terrace. So ensuring that people were not left without housing, they might have some really good suggestions and be able to share with you how they made that work as well as they did. The other thing I wanted to mention is just the density piece. I know and understand that once you start building over 7 stories, you're now looking at steel and concrete structure as opposed to wood. That really increases the cost of the housing. But also, I think there's ways to overcome that by being innovative. One of the things you might consider looking at too is there any private sector partnerships where you could bring jobs, where there would be opportunities for shared parking, and just looking at that. This is a great location, and I think bringing in maybe housing experts beyond the RHA for some brainstorming sessions might be really helpful. So that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess we have Mr. Jarvis back now with the remainder of our affordable housing presentation.
So good afternoon. Yes, we are going to be looking at some disposition recommendations relative to most of our vacant properties. So this afternoon, the agenda is going to be first looking at lots that we suggest including in the pending RFP that we discussed recently for family emergency shelter, transitional housing, and small nonprofit projects. Looking at lots that we would recommend that we look at rezoning and other disposition processes. Just kind of give you an update on the New Hope Baptist Church tiny home proposal, which is kind of a model or at least a prototype that is working its way through the review process. Looking at potential city lots that could be used in the future for tiny homes if the New Hope Baptist Church project works, and we kind of learn lessons from that, and then look at sites that are subject to further study. So first, we're going to look at that group of lots that we suggest including in the RFP. And as we shared with council last time, with the pending text changes relative to missing middle and other, we are going to have development opportunities on many lots for something like a duplex plus an ADU, when previously we could only have done single family detached. These particular two lots right here are in the East College Park project. We've talked about 319 North Carver, which is an existing structure that the city owns that we propose to demolish. Actually, the contract for the demolition is being routed right now. 317 Carver is also a lot that's owned by the city, but because of an easement on the southern boundary, it's not developable. But as you can see here, if we were to move that lot line and create two lots, we would have the opportunity here to do a duplex and an ADU on each of those lots for a total of 6 affordable units. And with respect to ADUs, in most instances or in all instances, a tiny home could be the form of ADU that would be the most feasible. But again, we think this is an opportunity to get some deeply affordable rental units in East College Park. And again, everything we're talking about today would be offered to nonprofits or others through a long-term land lease. We're not talking about the sale of any of these properties, but rather a land lease. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on individual locations, but just to share with you that we've got two here in Edenton that can be used. We have here at South, East, and Branch, we have some clusters, and the lot there on the left that you see, potentially we could get a small apartment building with perhaps 6 units in that. So it's a very deep lot. Wanted to call your attention to 503 Bragg Street here. 503, if that rings a bell to anybody. That is the location of PJ's convenience store on Bragg Street that is now owned by the city. The store itself has been closed now for several weeks. And again, the contract is being routed for the demolition of that structure. But again, on each of those, we could get a duplex and an ADU. Again, I'm not going to spend time on individual lots, but just to show you that we do have several scattered throughout various locations. And here on Gregg Street, again, if we were to do on each of those 4 lots, a duplex and an ADU, 12 affordable units here in that one location. Next, we want to talk about lots that we would suggest for rezoning in a different or a separate disposition process. The first location that I wanted to bring to your attention here is a cluster at East Cabarrus and East Street. What we are suggesting here is that we rezone our property to RX3 with a urban limited frontage and apply for parking exemptions. What we're looking at is taking the 3 northernmost lots there, once the rezoning has been accomplished, and soliciting proposals to do a 16-unit apartment building there that would be efficiencies, studio apartments with no off-street parking. We think there's lots of demand and need among downtown workers who wouldn't care about having an off-street parking space. I think this is an opportunity to do something innovative that we've not done before. And again, based on some of the studies with the Urban Design Center, we're pretty confident that we can site a building here of approximately 16 units. The 3 southern lots there, you can't really see it here, but there's a lot of topo on those 3 lots. It'll be very expensive to develop. I think our ultimate recommendation there would be to offer those 3 lots through the upset bid process, and then take those proceeds and invest into affordable housing projects elsewhere. But again, this is a downtown location, and you might, if you visualize, immediately west along Bloodworth Street, that site was recently rezoned. You can see that kind of indentation there. We had worked previously trying to achieve a land swap with that adjacent property owner. It kind of works to our advantage and to their advantage. That might be something we still pursue, is kind of squaring up those property lines. The other location is here at 424 and 428 South Bloodworth. And right now, this property and the previous properties were part of a planned development associated with Carlton Place. But again, we recommend rezoning this location to RX3 and then a separate disposition process. Turning now to New Hope Baptist Church. They have a tiny home proposal that's on the table. Our staff has met with them, the county staff has met, and of course, planning staff is very much involved. They're proposing a 12-unit project for veterans. Right now, they're at this point where the sketch plan review submittal is pending. Kind of show you the location. This is Capitol Boulevard over here on the left, where you see the red circle is New Hope Church Road. I think I can't see it that far from there. But the church is looking at using their parking lot in that corner. And again, this was the sketch plan that they had initially talked about, where you do have the 12 individual small tiny homes around some type of centralized space. Depending on how well that works its way through the development and review process, it actually gets built, and we all kind of learn our lessons. We have identified other or city-owned sites that might be considered for future tiny home development. Here's one at 124 Bledsoe Avenue, 714 Bloodworth Street. One here on Lee Street, where given the configuration of the lot and the depth, we might be able to get several tiny homes here. 414 Bragg Street. Then there are sites that we own that really are subject to further study for reasons I think will be fairly obvious. This actually, Wayne, is I think a property we inherited through the Housing Authority years ago. And someone is working to acquire adjacent property and propose to abandon or close Walzer Place, which is then going to create development opportunities on the 2 lots that we own there. When we close that cul-de-sac, it creates a parcel that then becomes more developable. One of the things that community development continues to do is to maintain what we call residual properties associated with the right-of-way purchase for Martin Luther King years ago. These are properties that are fronting on Martin Luther King, but otherwise there's issues of access, so we really need to look at what the options might be, because it's really not desirable perhaps to have direct driveway access to those lots off of MLK. Same thing here. This is a little bit further along on MLK, but you can see again, we have a lot of residuals that we have been maintaining over the years. There are, I would just mention, there are 4 other lots at Garner Road and McMacken that we are looking at the possibility of recommending a land swap with an adjacent property owner, which would enhance the developability of our property and enhance the developability of their property. And our real estate staff right now is looking at whether that land swap would make sense. So our questions for today is, does council favor or included the lots that we reviewed in the upcoming RFP? And does council support staff moving forward with the staff-initiated rezonings of the parcel that we reviewed and then issuing the RFP to solicit developer proposals for those properties? I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'm just going to say yes and yes, but we'll go with the first hand I saw raised, and that was Councilmember Cox, then Branch, then Melton.
I was wondering, when we say affordability, what percentage of AMI are we targeting for these properties?
Well, again, with the first 2 categories that we talked about, which would be emergency, non-congregate emergency shelter, and transitional, for the most part, you're talking in some cases of people might have 0 income, but all of those would be 30% AMI and below. So the emergency shelter and transitional is 0 to 30% for the most part. That's serving people who, are the most financially challenged. With the others, again, with the lots that we're suggesting putting in the RFP that will be coming out in July for the small nonprofit projects. Again, this goes back to the availability of bond dollars, and at least 1/3 of the units in projects supported by bond dollars and for which they could request city sites would have to be 30% AMI and below.
Okay, would there be any properties at 60% or 80% AMI?
If we are going to, if we're going to be soliciting proposals where we want 1/3 of the units to be 30% AMI and below, in order to have a financially viable project, that project is going to have units in there that are at 60% AMI or perhaps 80% AMI. A project that is all at 30% AMI doesn't generate enough income to even cover operating costs. You've got to have a mix for it to be viable.
Okay, I'm unclear about what the mix between 60 and 80% would be.
Again,
Don't we already, excuse me, don't we already have a policy on that?
we would solicit proposals where at least 1/3 of the units would have to be affordable at 30% AMI. We would receive those proposals, do an evaluation, and then bring those to council for a recommendation. And we would anticipate that the viable projects are going to have some units at 60% AMI, perhaps some at 80% AMI.
Okay, but those proposals would then come back to council for further consideration?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Branch, then Melton, then Ford. You're muted, Corey. Let's try again. Can you? Beth, could we have some assistance? I'm going to move to Councilmember Melton. Councilmember Branch, we'll come back to you.
I just wanted to say yes and yes to both questions as well. And as you were going through the presentation and looking at the slides, all I see is dirt that the city owns. It's not helping anyone right now. And I think the quicker we can move these into development and get folks housed there, the better. One thing that I want to make sure everyone's clear of is offering these as long-term land leases is also going to allow us to control the affordability for a really long time. And we saw a news article just this week about a private affordable housing development that sold, and residents are being displaced. And if we own the land and we lease the land for this development, then we can make sure that that doesn't happen on our watch in the future. And so I definitely want to get these vacant properties that are not helping anyone into development as soon as possible.
Okay, Councilmember Branch, give this a try again.
All right, can y'all hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So my question is for the property for this set for disposition. Can someone, are they individually, or can someone put in a proposal for multiple units at one time?
I couldn't understand the question, Mayor. Could you repeat it for me?
Could you speak up a little more?
Okay, so if can you, Larry, can you hear me, Larry?
No.
All right, Marianne.
Mayor, I heard the question if you want me to repeat it for him.
I was going to say you could put it in the chat as well, but if you have clarity on that.
Yeah, Councilmember Branch was saying that could someone bid on multiple properties, the ones that were
We would
moving into
anticipate,
RFP?
yeah, sure, we would anticipate that they would, but we would anticipate the Gregg Street cluster, for example, where there were 6 lots that we own. You know, we would anticipate, and it would be more desirable to have one developer, a nonprofit, you know, respond, you know, for Gregg Street, or to only have, you know, for purposes of management efficiency, we wouldn't want to split those lots up among multiple nonprofits.
Okay. Councilmember Branch, do you have any other questions? Okay, Councilmember Fort.
Yes, thank you. To kind of echo Councilmember Cox's question, I know, you know, when I'm in the community, I hear a lot that folks don't think 80% AMI is technically affordable housing. They think that number is way too high. If we're using city-owned property, then certainly there's got to be some discount in the development costs because the land costs are not associated with the development or construction. So to get back to his point, I guess the question is, how can we get an increase of the folks at the 30% AMI level if we're going to give some discounts for using city property to do the development so that you don't have 2/3 at 60% and above and 1/3 at 30% AMI?
Well, again, a scenario might be, hypothetically, that 2/3 of the units are at 30% AMI and 1/3 are at 80% AMI. And that is the blend of income streams that makes that particular project viable. So again, wouldn't that be desirable to maximize the number of units at 30%? And if the way you had to make that project viable is to allow some units at 80%, that to me is a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're saying that, you know, you can't have them at that price point, but it seems like a lot of the projects that are flowing through, you've got a minimum number of folks who have access at 30% AMI, and the majority are at the 60% AMI and above price point, which in lots of circumstances is not really helping the people in the community that we really need to be trying to help.
I'm going to intervene here. Larry, one thing I'd like for you to send out, which you had done earlier when we were considering the housing bond, is the reality of who is living in the units when we partner with people. I think the 30% was probably at 40% of the units. And that was based on a study we did with DHIC, whatnot. I think it would be helpful to resend out that information. Next was Councilor Buffkin, and then we'll go back to Councilor Melton.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say, from my part, yes on both questions, and then to briefly speak to this issue about the mix of incomes. And I'll go back to our first council meeting of this term when Mayor Schewel came over from Durham and talked to us about his views on housing. And he said something that made a big impression on me. And I would add this to the response that Mr. Jarvis just offered us on the financing side, and Mr. Jarvis was saying that you need a mix of incomes to cover the operating costs. Another benefit of having mixed incomes in these developments is you build a more healthy community. And what Mayor Schul said when he talked to us was, don't build projects that house only poor people. These are places that are devoid of hope. There's very few role models for the children that live there. A much better way for the community is to have this mix of income, people from different backgrounds, people of different means, helping each other to learn how to live together. And so I've come to really believe that that is the best solution for Raleigh. And I think it works financially and it works for the community as well. And so I think that's a good model to pursue. And I'm excited about these opportunities. And thank you, Mr. Jarvis, for your presentation today.
Thank you. Councilmember Melton.
I want to add one more thing. I agree with everything everyone has been saying about maximizing the affordability and also making sure that we're building communities. I also want to remind everyone that, and correct me, Mr. Jarvis, we adopted an official policy that when the city is involved, housing choice vouchers must be accepted and source of income cannot be discriminated against. And so the housing choice vouchers will also help close the gap with the affordability in the AMI. Is that correct? These properties, because it's city land, that they have to take all sources of income, including vouchers.
That is correct.
Okay. Are there any additional questions? Councilmember Cox?
Yeah, I'm still concerned that, we're basically allowing an unlimited amount of 80% AMI at the top. And it would be nice when the RFP went out if we could cap that somehow. And I mean, ideally, it would be nice if we could say that, in our RFP that we're looking for projects that will commit to 60% and lower and give those priority. But the way things are worded, it's like, a developer could come back and propose an awful lot of 80% AMI, which really doesn't help as much. But of course, we'll see that when the proposals come in, and whether or not we want to go forward with them at that time, I guess. But I'm a little disappointed that we can't give a little more certainty about the maximum amount of the number of units that we're going to commit to the higher income and be able to commit more to people with lower income.
Councilmember Branch?
All right. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I went back and looked at our May meeting when we had 2 projects for tax credits. Of the roughly 282 units, 9 of them were at 80% AMI. 177 were at 60%, 67 were at 50%, and 29 were at 30%. And those are between those 2 projects. So I think we all are saying what we want and what we desired. I think we just got to look at each project as they come in and make sure that we're seeing those at the lower end of the AMI at a higher rate, but also we have to make sure we have projects that are feasible, that can move forward. So I think Councilor Fort and Councilor Cox have made very good points that I agree with as far as targeting that area. And I think this last data, out of 282 units, only 9 were at 80% of AMI. So I think that kind of brings a circle around it, but we need to continue to keep that focus.
Yes. Council Branch, I think the communities that we approved in May, it was 10%, 80% AMI, 30% of 30% AMI, and the remainders 50 to 60. And as was explained to us at the time, this is a financing issue. And if there's a greater need to explain how financing works and how the numbers work and how operations works, maybe then we need more detail. I know it's our reality. What we're also going to be dealing with is an escalation of cost related to materials and whatnot, which is also going to present challenges. So, and then going back to what Councillor Buffkin said, I do remember those words from Mayor Schewel, and I think that they're wise words, and I think that's also what many housing experts across the country are saying. So I hope, Mr. Jarvis, you have gotten clarity. I think the answer to both is yes and yes. And let's move forward. We'll see what the RFPs bring back, and then we'll vote accordingly based on what we see. I would, in the RFPs, just encourage innovative thinking and trying new things. I think that is the goal of this council, is to provide housing choices. And I think that's definitely the road you're heading on. So I'm really happy to see that, between the tiny homes, ADUs, just different types of housing that will be key to future success. So thank you.
Thank you. And again, staff is prepared to provide a brief update on our housing rehab program if council chooses to do that, or we can move on to the second part of the work session, whatever you prefer.
Could it be brief?
I think so. Lamont, can you make it like 3 minutes?
I was going to say 5. We can do that.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of Council. I'm Lamont Taylor, and coming to you today to share a few updates and recommended program revisions to our housing rehab program. The program currently assists low-income homeowners with substantial repairs and limited repairs to their home. Our budget for next year is for rehab is about $1.9 million, just over $1.9 million, and we hope to serve up to 50 households with that funding. And last year, 2020, we stopped accepting applications, and since that time, we have heard from over 100 residents expressing interest in our program for assistance. Our current program guidelines are shown on this slide, and we are proposing to make some changes to those some of those guidelines, but I share them for your information. So to refocus our program on lower income residents with the greatest need, we're proposing the following program revisions. And I know that slide has quite a bit of information, but in summary, reducing the income limit for our substantial rehab program, evaluating qualifying homes, updating our application period process, and making a change to our limited repair program. And of course, with your endorsement this evening, we hope to revise the program guidelines effective July 21st, rolling it out to residents, and also with that, increase our efforts to recruit and retain new and more contractors to the program. and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
I just have one question for now. You said about contractors not having enough. Have you looked at partnering with, say, Habitat for Humanity's rehab program or a nonprofit such as Building Together?
I believe that we have, and we're right now going to explore some new ways to attract not only nonprofit partners, as you mentioned, but also small contractors who are in the Triangle region through perhaps a more aggressive outreach. Of course, we've been working through COVID, and in-person meetings have not really been possible for over a year now, but we will be looking at more contractor workshops, more outreach to more partners, and perhaps some in-person events when circumstances are such that we can do so.
Perhaps you might want to also look at a potential partnership with Wake Tech. Their contractor academy and other things that they do could help provide some sources that could be developed over time.
We can certainly look into that and report back to you.
Okay, that would be great. I see Councilmember Fort's hand raised, but I think I saw Councilmember Branch's hand up. No. Okay, Councilmember Fort.
Thank you. In addition to the suggestions that you've already received, I don't know if it would be helpful, but I would think maybe having a conversation with our folks at the state hub office. Certainly, they would probably have a number of vendors that would be interested in these opportunities. And we have a number of other groups, the Chamber of Commerce, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce locally, a number of minority business groups. Certainly, if we're talking about doing aggressive outreach, maybe even contemplating, getting stuff out through the media that we've got these needs. I agree, a very aggressive approach is going to be important so we can get the contractors in who can do the work and kind of knock down this waiting list that we've got. But we've also got quite a few people who have not even attempted to contact the city because they know how long the possibility is in terms of getting something done. So certainly I would think those may be some additional avenues to do some outreach to try to get some contractors lined up to get some of the work done.
Yeah, United Minority Contractors of North Carolina could be another option as well. Do we have any additional questions? Okay, I think we are all very anxious to get moving on this. And so let's go.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, next we have our MWBE disparity study. Lakeisha Shaw from our Office of Equity Inclusion.
Good afternoon, mayor and member of council. There's only one mayor. I'm Audrey Caesar with the Office of Equity and Inclusion, and today we'll be giving you an update on our process for selecting an RFI and then moving towards the RFP. We're in the current process of reviewing proposals, and here to present today is Lakeisha Shaw, the MWBE Program Manager.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. Thank you, Dr. Caesar. So I'll get started with providing the update once the presentation comes up. Thank you. So September 8th, 2020, Council directed staff to do a research a possible collaboration with Wake County and the Wake County Public Schools. The purpose of the collaboration was to identify the feasibility of one contractor handling the scope of 3 large organizations and if there was any cost savings associated with a joint RFP. We released an RFI January 6, 2021, and it closed January 27, 2021. Based on the responses to the RFI and staff discussion, the recommendation was not to pursue a joint study. Some of the reasons were minimal cost savings, if any, the slower process to the schedule overall, individual reports would be required per entity, and then a lack of shared vendors may also impact the schedule. Other recommendations from the RFI, so we did see a potential for a joint market analysis as entities if they were pursuing disparity studies in the same time frame. Staff will seek ways to collaborate during the study process to share data, and then staff discuss synergies and opportunities to partner and collaborate on aspects of community and vendor outreach, and also during the subsequent disparity implementation phase. So looking at some of the best practices post-study that may be able to be shared across entities came up in the discussion as well. So we'll consider to look towards that as we get beyond the study and into the implementation phase. The request for proposal was advertised April 1st, 2021 through May 13th, 2021. We received a total of 6 proposals. The next round is to allow the top 3 ranking firms to present or make presentations. The proposal presentations actually begun today, June 8th, and they'll run through the 10th, which is Thursday of this week. And so we have begun to hear presentations as well. The RFP review process, so we did establish a 6-member evaluation committee. Representation is from finance, the finance office, budget, Raleigh Water, OEI, and MWBE, and then the city attorney's office as a non-voting member. Just to give you a little overview of the actual RFP review process that we've undertaken as a committee, we've developed the RFP, including determining criteria. We met to discuss the evaluation process. We read each proposal to evaluate against the criteria, and then we scored and ranked each proposer. And so that yielded us to invite the top 3 ranking firms to come back and provide an oral presentation, which began today. Next steps, we anticipate being prepared to make a recommendation in early July, so as to our recommended vendor to bring forward to council. That's the end of the presentation, and we'll take any questions that you may have.
Okay, do we have any questions? Councilmember Branch?
Try this again. I just want to say thank you for the work you're doing, and we look forward to, I definitely look forward to seeing the recommendation and the data of who will be pushing and doing our study. So thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. We're very excited as well. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? I just want to say that this has been discussed for quite a number of years. We are making progress, and I want to thank you for your work. This is really important and very timely, so thank you.
You're most welcome.
Okay, do we have any other questions? There are no more matters. I do have one issue I want to bring up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, one thing I did note, and I meant to bring this up earlier when we were talking about the elections, is our schedule, city council schedule, we had moved 2 dates. October 5th would have been our normal council meeting, but the calendar moved that to the 6th. And then November 2nd would have been our regular council meeting, but the calendar has it the 3rd. In light of the fact that we're not having an election this October, could we look at our calendar and have that come back to us with an October 5th council meeting date and a November 2nd council meeting date for 2021? Okay. That is all. Any other questions, comments? City manager?
Yes, a little birdie told me today that there's somebody on the screen who turned 21 today. So I won't call out any names, but I think one amongst you all are having a birthday today. So we just wanted to tell that particular council member, and he can out himself. Happy birthday.
Well, yes, happy birthday. Since he's waving, I think we all know who that is now, but have a great day and go Canes.
Okay, she wasn't exactly accurate at 29, I'll have to admit. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, City Manager, and everyone. Thank you. Happy birthday.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for bringing that up, City Manager. Happy birthday, David. And like I said, let's go Canes.